and welcome to Highly Informed. I'm your host, Shaun Salvaje. Highly Informed is all about entheogenic education and news you can use when it comes to the world of cannabis and psychedelics. I am here wrapping up day one of filming What a Day It's Been with my good friend, Marissa. No T in this Twitchell. How are you? How did it was an adventure getting in, and that I feel like if you don't have one of those MJBiz stories, did you even go?
I have not. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so stoked to be sitting at this table. And I know we'll probably talk about our history and our background together a little bit, but what a full circle MJBiz it is for.
It is kind of amazing.
It is wrapping up 2024. You are the start to my MJBiz. I actually chose not to come in yesterday and to fly in this morning so that you could be kind of my first intro to MJBiz for 2024. And then we will continue on and do all the things.
Yes, we're gonna plant all the right seeds then. Okay, and we're on this fourth episode, and it was pretty crazy to try to do 12 to 13 in 3 days, and I feel really good about what we're doing. And those first three were fire. I'm so excited though to kick off my boots.
Yes.
And kick back with you and kind of go through when I first met you, this is the best way to connect as far as everybody's experience of MJBiz. There's going to be a lot of first-timers out there who are watching this, or people who are considering going next year, or people who are here right now. If we release this, I don't know, I'm kind of winging it. If we release it while we're here this week, which is an we might, but or they're considering going next year, they're going to be in the same position. I remember when I attended my first MJBiz, in 2021.
2021.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen you in person since 2021 at MJBiz in Las Vegas.
You try to legalize Texas, you're going to get lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
It was kind of a crazy adventure. I hadn't been back because I wanted to try to find a way to get my foot in the door for Texas through hemp cultivation, because I figured, now, going back, when we look back at what we thought in 2020 and what we were going to do in 2021 and where we are in 2025.
Girl, you're ahead of the curve if you got into hemp back then. Look at what's going on now.
I don't like to say business. I told you so, but...
Hey, it doesn't count if it's not combusted, right?
Oh my God. So I wanted to get into cultivation. And what does that actually mean, though? Do you think it actually means touching a plant? What I learned is no, it doesn't. It meant first you got to find a property. And to do that, you got to build capital. So it took a lot of, I have been in ancillary services, and that is what I have disappeared off into, kind of learning and going through the rigors of figuring out what's really going on in the industry. Where do we need help? From where I started, and Marissa knows me from, it's been now 5 years, because we all locked down during the pandemic. This magical thing happened where we all got to share our stories across the state lines in different markets.
Yes.
And make these new connections that I don't think without COVID, that would have never happened.
1,000,000%.
I wonder, what do you, looking back, how do you feel that little bubble influence? It's just like MJBiz. Except we had it so routinely. Now when you can come to an event at MJBiz, you can manifest something, and then years later it can turn into something completely else. Yeah. Looking at what that little magic bubble that we all existed in, where everybody's gone since.
Yeah.
What do you...
look at where everybody is, right? Even, I know I'm your last interview of the day, and a lot of the people that you had on were from that little microcosm, and you just said you disappeared for the last few years and you just popped up, and look, you're still able to pop up, reach out to that community, and we're all showing up for you.
And we're all doing something. It's crazy. It's kind of amazing. And I think what I love is that we had JB on from Illicit Gardens, and he has gone through this whole
Shout
transition.
Out JB. He's the homie.
From Dutchy to Missouri with this and this, what he's building out there, and the sense of community that he's trying to foster. I think what I'm most excited about is, yes, do we do the hard stuff? Do we do the banking and the finance conversations? And did do we have Nicole on? And we analyzed the fuck out of California.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And thank you, JB, for bringing it back to like the family, and then visiting with Max and Twinkle and bringing it back to the science and the botany of the plant. We went through all the meat, but like this conversation is going to be the after action report. And that's my favorite part. It's like a thing that we do in the military. It's called a hot wash.
Okay.
And it's like you go through what's working, what's not working, but it's not in this analytical sense. It's like tap into the real intuition of it. And I know when we first connected, one of the points of connection that really resonated, and I feel like this resonates for a lot of the women in cannabis, and we're seeing way more. When I tried to book the show, it wasn't intentional. I even told you, like, when we were booking the show, I'm looking for guys because I have a full stack of women in cannabis that are just kicking ass.
Yeah.
And I feel like I want to make sure we don't have it. It's not a biased perspective that everybody gets a seat at the table.
I agree.
But it was weird that I was trying to like find guys to help bring them into the table. And that's not necessarily an indicator of like the full industry or who's getting paid what, but
that's
kind of amazing. I know, right? we could dive into that, but that's for the morning shows. No. Yeah. How, like, what are you seeing with the women? Like, what are you most excited about coming back to MJ Biz and what you're seeing with women in cannabis?
I'm really excited to be sitting here with you because, like we said, you know, we're 5 years into our friendship and into being colleagues in the space, and we've had a special relationship. Even when we had our pre-interview for this, like, we were on the phone way too long. It's too easy for us, you know? And so I'm just really excited to be here. I flew in just now specifically to come do this interview, and then we'll go continue and do our little MJ Biz stuff.
I feel like there's something to be said about that because when I first came, my first MJ Biz, it was Marissa pulled me into a party where, like, as we were walking in, who was it? What? It was Busta. It was Busta Rhymes walking out.
It was Redman.
It was Redman.
Well, there were a few celebrities.
But yeah.
Yeah. But
I did see, so Busta Rhymes was walking out, but Redman, you're right. You're right as far as like someone was getting way more political and really into the activity of the politics of it all. And it was like this interesting conversation. And I would have never been there if you hadn't pulled me in. And there's something to be said about the folks who are willing to pull people up and in instead of looking at it like competition. How do you see that playing out?
Oh, gosh. Thank you for bringing that up. That's actually, so I think that's one of my biggest things in the industry, right? Like a lot of, you know, my history, whoever's watching probably doesn't, but I do come from the legacy side. But I didn't enter the legal California market until like 6 years ago. And I knew nothing. Like I knew trapping. I just knew a whole different lifestyle. And I had left that lifestyle for a very long time, like a very long time. I was completely removed from anything business-wise in our industry. And so I started in California cannabis at the absolute bottom. And if nobody helped me or opened doors for me or introduced me, I would never be where I am. And I remember being like at the bottom of this industry, and I grew really rapidly, like my pace, because I was driven, right? And I knew, I was like, all right, I'm going to give it 6 months here. And if I'm not promoted, I'm going somewhere else. I would give myself.
I want to dive into that.
Yeah, we could talk about that for sure.
We're going to give some good advice.
And I did. I started off as a brand ambassador. And I don't think a lot of people in the industry know that. Like I was willing to start off like doing PADs in my 30s. Like, talk about humbling. Like, I've done so many different things and done other things in other industries and been on the legacy side. So to like stand in a dispensary and like promote products, like I was super grateful for it, but I was also like way older and like probably more experienced and somewhat knowledgeable about certain things than other people in the same position. And so
I do feel like it does give us an advantage because there is a level of if I wasn't in my 30s already and I still feel like so young. Yeah. Because I have already been learned. Like you get educated by, especially your little rough around the edges mentors. And they're like, "What the fuck were you thinking?" Worse, far worse. I have had someone yell so hard, and at first I was like, "They can't fucking talk to me like that." And then I was like, oh, everything he's saying I would
Yeah.
never hear from anyone else, and he's telling me the way I need to hear it for
For
it to actually
sure.
sink.
For
And does it
sure.
hurt like
Yeah.
hell? Yeah, but also I need that. However, not everybody has that skill set or level of experience
Yeah.
because he knows something with all of his depth of knowledge
Mhm.
and years of experience that if you're just some guy on the street who's 5 years into cannabis and you're not, or any industry, like,
Mhm.
and you come in yelling at someone, you're not, no one's going to listen to you.
For sure. And that's something that I wish that I had or like had the wherewithal to find was a mentor. I definitely didn't, but I had given myself goals and I was eating this humble pie and I was just super driven. Like, let me learn everything about California cannabis and what we can do. And just grew and up leveled myself. Like at that brand investing, I was like, I'm gonna learn everything that I can, take advantage of every opportunity. And that meant every event, everything, even if I had to pay for myself. Like back then I didn't have brands sending me to MJBizCon
Oh,
or
yeah.
Hall of Flowers, or if I
And
did, it
even
was a
people who
one-off.
are getting paid for it are not always really compensated what the cost actually is
No, and
to
it's
really do
thousands of
this.
dollars to attend these
Yeah.
things every time, you know, and when you're doing them all the time, like, yeah, I mean, in the last like couple of months alone, I've done like 6 of these things, right? Like I'm up in Humboldt for CannaFest, and then the next
Mm.
month I'm up in Santa Rosa for Hall of Flowers, and
Wait, so
then
how do you make sure that when you're like, you do have to stay you have to stay relevant and you have to resonate with like the industry and stay in touch because it evolves so rapidly?
it does.
How do you choose which ones where you're like, this is where I'm going to be and where I'm looking forward to? And when you're like, hey man, I love you and we're buddies, but like we have got to keep evolving beyond our normal circle, you
So
know?
I'm doing that right now at MJ Biz. We talked about it in the green room a little bit. Like, there's a couple layers of where I'm targeting where I go. So like CannaFest, Humboldt is iconic. It's a huge birthplace of cannabis.
You have to go to Humboldt
You
at some
have to
point.
spend time in Humboldt.
Yeah.
And Humboldt is really like keeping the culture in a lot of ways. And I live as far south from Humboldt as you can because I'm in San Diego.
But the opportunity to also go out and be in nature and be in that experience.
1,000,000%. Yeah. And it's like, so being a part of CannaFest is like one subset of the culture. And I was a judge there and like have a bunch of friends there. And that's fun, right? Like I love judging these competitions and being involved in that. So it's like, I'm going to look at it a bunch of ways on if I attend an event. Either it's going to up level my career in some way, whether that's monetarily or just like culturally, or you're a friend of mine and I'm going to come support. And that's what we're doing at this table,
you're the kind
right?
of friend who shows up.
Yeah, I always show up. I always show up. And people have showed up for me. And even going back to like what we kind of started talking about, I've always opened doors for people. And I still to this day, I'm like, I'll talk to anybody for
What was it that you learned about opening doors for people? It just works better.
because people opened doors for me. And I recognized like I was hungry. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anybody. And I was just showing up. I was showing up to the MJ Biz, the Hall of Flowers, and I was reaching out and trying to like network with people. And along the way, I met so many dope people like you, like JB, like Rama from Hall of Flowers, just so many people that really like opened doors when they didn't need to. And it was that cannabis community. Like we do have a culture. And that's why I get asked to like speak on culture because I am immersed in it. And I can sit in a boardroom and hold my weight, but I can also go to the trap sesh and hold my weight.
I think that there's something I didn't know how to put it on my resume. I was like, can I don't even know what it says right now, but it was something about you have to be, because I haven't used one in a minute, but like can translate, like can be a bridge between diverse communities.
Yeah.
And I think that's this is an unsung skill set or something that we are desperately in need of right now. Like not just in the cannabis industry, but also on a national level. Like
For
we've got to
sure.
find a way to have some kind of level of mediation between all the different ways of looking at problems.
1,000,000%. And I don't know. I'm just super passionate and still talk to people like, or talk about like my phone number's open, my LinkedIn's open, my Instagram, whatever. Like I have like 4 mentees. I will open the door for anybody. And I'll give anybody a half hour, an hour conversation, like, and give you my feedback. And people did that for me. I mean,
You know,
people
one
really
thing I
gave
wanna
me shots.
push
So,
on
yeah.
is like, okay, so people open doors for you.
Yeah.
Yes. And then it occurs to me. So you open that door. I walked into that party. And the first thing I see when I'm coming in is it's Red Man. And there are a million celebrities, but actually the celebrities are like, can I be frank? They're the least interesting thing. Like the most, there's
Redman is good and for the culture though.
He is.
He's one of the good ones. Yeah.
Well, that's what was profound about when I was walking in and I saw him was that he wasn't talking about rap and he wasn't talking about music and he wasn't talking about movies.
About cannabis.
And he was talking about policy, like how to regulate policy and how to create policy. And you see it through like this whole different lens of experience. And we go in, so that was like, okay, that's my preview into this is what this is. Okay, what world have I stepped into?
Yes.
Then I walk into the Spearmint right now, and we can have conversations about that location. But the reality is, well, you know, it depends on how you're experiencing Vegas, and you find mentors in all sorts of different spaces. And I have to be frank with everybody. Like when we're in Texas, listen, if I came up in a different era, maybe, and things are changing, but I, as a Latina in Texas, I cannot afford to turn my nose at anyone who's willing to show me what they've already learned.
For sure.
I cannot afford it. So, like, I understand when it doesn't mean I condone behavior. It does mean I need to be in those spaces, though, and be willing to adapt and learn. And that's kind of like, and I'm not saying it means you have to sign on and do the things.
Listen,
like, there's no P. Diddy party over here.
We're not P. Diddying it over here, but
no.
a lot of business does go down in a lot of different late night spots.
Yes, and that's not unique to cannabis.
It is
but
not.
And that's not the only location. Everybody's doing whatever they can to meet whoever they can. And with 30,000 attendees, 30,000, you're going to have folks from all walks of life.
Is it 30? I thought it was like 60.
Is it 60?
I don't know.
The last number that I saw on the website was 30.
I could be
MJBiz, if you have your numbers, let me know. We'll plug them in.
I know, right? I almost feel like maybe 30,000 attend the show and maybe 60 come into town for it. I could be way off.
No, I think you're actually, no, there's a whole
in.
Second level economy. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So they might have 30,000 passes sold, but you're right. There's more people who are coming in than that.
I have a meeting tomorrow with like a big name in cannabis, and they're not even attending the no offense to MJ.
No.
Love MJ.
But to give credit, you did bring everybody here.
But they do. They
congratulations.
Yeah. I mean, Spanibus, MJ, Hall of Flowers, like those three are kind of in my mind, the top tier.
I was a little bit, I'm hoping that South by Southwest will have programming this year. That was also a reason why we couldn't film was they canceled the cannabis track, like essentially.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So there was, and we were filming I'm out of Austin. I'm not going to take the production on the road until I can test it out a little bit. Of course. Locally. Yeah. But now we're on the road.
And here we are.
Yay. One of the things that was popping up when you were like talking about bringing people up, and I did, like I said, I come from a different generation. You can't afford to turn your nose up at things and at least poke around and learn. While you may not agree with everyone who you run into, and I don't know, you tell me if generationally, because I know the kids these days, they want something else. But if someone's willing to show me what they've learned and I can separate or distill what they've learned away from however they learned it, so that way I can get better and do better and be better and like be that good shepherd. I want to know what they know. Like I don't know, is that just like too militant of me? If the enemy knows, I should probably know too.
I don't know. Knowledge is wealth, right? And like power. So,
well, it's just like I think the issue becomes like, because we're talking about like being at the Spearmint Rhino or being over here or learning from tough mentors.
I have no
who
shame
get
in
into
being
your
at the
face.
Spearmint Rhino. I just didn't know we were going to put it on the podcast.
My dad, what happens in Vegas? If you really think what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, you are dumb. You are so dumb. I had people come to a conference not in cannabis, and they went back home to Austin. It was a totally different thing, like a jiu-jitsu event or something. And then they come back to Austin, and it's months later, and I can't stop hearing about whatever drama happened in Vegas.
Yeah.
And no, it doesn't stay. And that's a good thing, because if you do something, you put the pedal to the metal, you show up willing to learn and listen. I think that's what I was unsuccessfully trying to get at, is there are going to be spaces where you may not necessarily agree with every single thing that the person has done. And we're not talking about major serious crimes or issues of morality. But like, I feel like there's something that we're losing as far as learning goes, with being a little bit willing to like get yelled at and learn the hard way sometimes, and be told where you're fucking up.
Yeah, and I just think that there's just such division all across the board right now. Like, no matter what we're talking about, whether we're talking about like politics, religion, like male, female, like you name it, like we're in a very divided space. So I really try not to feed into divisive spaces. Like, I just try to take myself right out of those conversations, because I do think everyone's entitled to their opinion, whether you agree or not. And I do think that being divisive doesn't help anybody learn, grow, or educate themselves, no matter how angry or upset you may feel about a topic. And I have my own triggers, right? That I'm like, go nuts about if somebody doesn't agree with me. But I also have to check myself, because that's not arguing or crying or cutting somebody off over a disagreement is not going to move anything forward. I feel like people
have gotten so uncomfortable with being able to comfortably disagree. Yeah, like we need to have a discourse. Well, where's the
conversation? But
how do we do it?
Well, social media is a big divider, as much as like you and I both like utilize social media in a multitude of ways. And it's so easy for
people to want to misinterpret what you're saying.
But also, like, I've noticed how my mentality has changed, like overusing social media, like just to throw it out there. Like, my attention span has diminished. I am quick to like knee-jerk reactions. I do have to check myself on judgment a lot. And I'm doing a lot of self-work on that right now. Like, how is technology like changing the way that my brain we actually works?
Behave? And that's like a lot to come up against when you're not realizing that it's like a subconscious pattern of behavior.
I've been conscious of it for a while.
Oh my God. Are you telling me I have something that I need to work? No, I'm just kidding.
We all do. If you're on social media, you've got some stuff to work on. If you're using it more than 1 hour a day,
work on some shit.
Yourself. Yeah.
I think the best thing that people can do is outsource it. Like, the best thing, I don't really even love doing social all the time for clients unless we're doing it as some kind of creative project.
Well, I do, and I'll increase your engagement by 333%.
Oh. See, I like doing like that. We can do this here. Yeah, but there's an art and a strategy to it. And that's why you should outsource it. Like, I should hire someone like you, because then it's not personal and I'm not in it, and I can create, and then you can tell me this is working, this is working, this is not working, don't go in that direction.
And here's the funny part is, like, I really struggled because my Instagram, I started like before I was posting anything cannabis. So it's like very personal. You'll see like my family on there, just history from like 2012 or 13 or however many years it's been. And when I'm on that account, there's a lot of triggers for me and emotions and all the things. When I'm running other people's accounts, none of that affects me.
Everyone should outsource their own shit.
Yeah. And I've run multiple cannabis brands, social media for particular times. And
well, let's bring it to the audience. Like, what doing the like, let's help everybody out for like words of wisdom for anyone at MJBiz who's trying to figure it out. What are some of the things that you're seeing on the horizon for how we're communicating, how we're socializing, and how we're using like new media, like social media?
Are we talking about like new entries to the biz?
You're right, because there's like a difference.
There's so many layers and levels.
Let's talk to newcomers. Let's talk to newcomers, and then after newcomers, what can you do if you're already established? Because you're definitely, from what the bankers told me, you're feeling the pinch, you know?
Yeah. So I think that there's a multitude of levels, but you have to like kind of always, okay. So if you're entering the industry, I think my biggest thing is like just learn. Find a mentor or two, however many you can. Find somebody you look up to and learn from them, and ask questions. Like, I asked so many dumb questions when I first started.
I love dumb questions.
Yeah, but like embarrassing. Like, I'll never forget when I was, I was in I was in Europe and I was in this like international WhatsApp group, and I asked like such a dumb question and got like laughed out of the chat. But then I redeemed myself really quickly. But it was just such a moment of like, oh God, I was lying in my hotel bed.
I love
just
it though.
in shame. Like, oh,
I don't know if it's
God.
the jujitsu, like so you fail and you get choked as the result, and you're like, you get so
I'll never forget
comfortable.
that. I'll never forget that humiliation.
You never forget it, but you learn from it
But I
fast
learned
as
from
fuck.
it. I learned from it, and that's the thing. Like,
And the
you're
sooner you
gonna
get
have
comfortable with,
moments
like-
of humiliation. We all do as humans, right? And
Everybody.
so especially coming into this industry, like I don't care how much you know, if you've been on the trap side or the legacy side or
Which
whatever
everything
you've
is
done.
changing so fast, by the way. You have to stay current.
Exactly. And so I guess like my advice to a newcomer would be like show up, ask questions, find a mentor, and be ready to like pay out of pocket to be at the things. I spent a lot of money initially to be at the MJBiz, to be at the Hall of Flowers, to be at the Liddy in the City or whatever event it was. And I was going to events like multiple times a month, and it was, and a lot of them are in LA for me, and or Northern California or San Francisco, Santa Cruz, wherever they are, Santa Rosa. And I didn't care. I knew I had to be there. I knew I had to network. I knew I had to meet the right people. And I did. And my trajectory grew incredibly fast.
But you did it in a way, like there's a difference, I think, between blowing a ton of money on Vegas and coming out to a conference and walking and
don't get me wrong. Don't blow your money. Just
you gotta
be prepared to pay for yourself. Yeah.
Well, and if you be prepared to pay for yourself and make sure that you have structured it so that you actually have a return on your investment, like know what you're actually going for. And if you're coming for like explore and learn, that's worth it. I mean, it's worth it on its own. Be smart about how you're budgeting if you're new and you're not playing with like tons of money. If you are playing with tons of money, you still want to, time is money when you're at these conferences too.
Sure. And even once somebody starts paying for you, whether you're with a brand or you have funding or an investor, whatever it is, like once you have that, you need to keep like checking yourself on what your goal is. We were talking earlier and I was saying to you, like, we were talking about what parties we're going to go to at MJBiz, because let's not lie, a lot of us, you know, you do a lot of business.
Well, there's 30,000 who bought a ticket. There's 60,000 hanging out.
And I might be wrong about that stat.
No,
but
I don't think you're wrong. I
understanding.
think there's definitely a secondary, and that's props to MJBiz actually. For,
1,000,000%. Bringing us together.
They had a great idea. They brought everybody together so much so that more, it's like a lot like the cannabis industry. It just expounds, like it grows exponentially.
Exactly. And I think that you just have to like check what your next goal is. Like last year I had a great time, but I wasn't very like targeted on what I wanted to accomplish or who I wanted to meet or what I wanted to do. Now the year before that I was, and last year was like kind of a wash for me, and I went home and was like, well, all right. And so this year I was like, okay, as much as I love my friends and my California fam who's like throwing events, and I do want to support them, like I'm coming to MJ. That's why I didn't come yesterday and I came today. I'm starting with you because this podcast was important to me. I wanted to show up my best version of myself. So I chose to fly in, come see you. And then I'm starting MJBiz at the Cosmo with you after this is done.
I know, I'm excited.
Right. So the last interview of the day, that was not an accident.
Dude, they ran me through. I had to go. We had to, thinking about banking and financing and all the cannabis problems. Oh my. I was really looking forward to sitting across the bar, like this little tabletop with chatting. You and just shooting it.
Well, we've always had the best conversations. But this year I'm like, okay, well, I would really like to target international and funding investors. So I'm coming with like a very clear goal on what I'm doing for the next couple of days, rather than last year when I just kind of was like, I had some goals in mind, but I wasn't great at executing them. And that's the thing. Like I think you have to always check yourself, right? That's what it is you have to always check in with yourself and be like, okay, well, I've accomplished this or I haven't. And that's the other thing we were talking about. Like in this industry, there's a lot of challenges that you don't see in any other industry, as we know. But also there is a lot of opportunity to grow quickly. Like it is a very welcoming community overall. Not always, but overall.
And it's still the early roots. These are still the root stages.
Like, it's still the Wild West. I mean, it's not, we've always called it that in California, and it's definitely not 2018 anymore. Money's
Isn't that
dried
crazy
up,
though?
lots of
Like
crazy
time,
things.
how
Yeah.
time and money, like how it feels like, I don't know. Doesn't it feel like it's moving so much faster than it used to? Or
Well,
I
man,
could just
2020
be,
did something weird with the timeline.
did.
I don't know. 'Cause things go really fast.
we
and I'm
need to-
looking at
we
like my
needed to do
age and I'm like, what's happening?
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And but this, I have an idea. We need to do a special season where I only interview conspiracy theorists. I think it would be so good.
On.
It would be good. And then we can talk about all the conspiracies in cannabis. No, I don't know. You want to be careful.
Yeah,
but,
definitely. But yeah, I don't know. I like our whole thing is like opening doors, lifting people up. I think it's super important. Like, and I'm not perfect. I'm sure there's someone out there that's like,
I'm sure I'm going to make tons of mistakes. Yeah.
Experience with me, and everybody can't be their best version of themselves all the time. But like in general, I'd like to say that my door is open, my phone is open. Yeah, I mean, if you're not rattling a cage or two, you're doing something wrong. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's tough though because like you wanna grow and learn, and you wanna have the room to make mistakes. But also, it is a tough industry. There's a lot of money on the table.
It's very tough.
And then
is there money on the table? I feel like that part is dried up.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of debt on the table. My imaginary money, the debt financed imaginary monies, which is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I'll need an IV for that one.
We don't have to tackle that one today.
That's another podcast.
Yes, it's episode 3. No, but. I'm kind of, so you're more intentional this year with MJBiz.
Yeah.
I love this because you brought me in, like, it's kind of like, let's give everybody your top tips.
Yeah.
Mentor, mentee. What did you learn? What didn't you learn?
Yeah.
Like, what didn't you learn? Is that my text is coming out? Is that the right way? What didn't? Yeah, it is.
Kinda. And yeah, definitely. And I know when we were like,
I'm hitting this, JB. I gotta, damn it, JB, stop it.
Oh,
you're making me tangle up my words now.
What is that?
It's one of the vapes that he brought back here. Shout it out. It's really nice. It's really smooth. It's a rosin.
I don't know what it says. Something melts. Blue Mosa. I like that it's like clearly marijuana.
I know, right? Texas is going to be very mad at me.
Whatever JB's got.
Monopoly melts.
Oh,
Blue
Monopoly.
Mosa.
I love that I couldn't read
Delicious.
that.
Delicious.
It's hitting right.
Yes, it is.
Good.
But we can't get lost in the sauce though.
Oh, girl.
We gotta get the people like, okay, if this was your first time at MJBiz, tell yourself, Marissa, go back to your first MJBiz. What would you tell yourself?
So I don't really remember my first MJBiz. I know like the first one that I came to with a lot on the table, we were throwing a huge event. I was hugely a big part of being responsible for that event. And that, I mean, that still to this day was my favorite MJ. I think it was 2021.
It was a good MJ,
that was
man.
A good one.
I think we were all locked up, and then we were like, release the hounds.
I ended up staying like a psychopath. If anyone's done MJBiz and done it properly, you are dying to go home by Friday.
Yes.
I got a call from a couple of the homies like, hey, we're going to see Wiz Khalifa tonight. You should stay in town.
That was a crazy MJBiz.
Yes. And then I said to my friend and coworker, and I think boss at the time, boss. And I was like, hey, like, oh, I just got a call from these guys. They're going to see Wiz. And he's like, hold on. Like calls their management team. And all of a sudden, like we have a table at stage because he used to work with Wiz. And I ended up staying the whole weekend.
Oh my God.
So I did like 5 or 6 days in Vegas, which like no one should ever do. But it was my favorite because I worked super hard, and then we played pretty hard that weekend. But it'll forever go to, and that's the one that you and I
was good.
The fun night.
That was actually, that ended up being weird and crazy too. Okay, so now I'm like, okay, we're going to go through your best business advice. There was something in the energy because somehow I ended up with a staff pass at EDC.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and
I'm
I was
sure it was one of the
leave.
Vegas girls like Danny or Tina. Shout out.
It was Aldo Caldo.
Oh,
thank you so much. Come Weedian.
Oh, I know Aldo.
Aldo's the shit.
He's hilarious.
Dude, I might have fucked up though, because I could never find him while I was there. I had to leave on a plane, but Aldo Caldo called in a favor.
It happened.
And he got me to EDC. Well, I had to get on the plane to leave because my son's birthday was coming up and I was not going to miss that.
Yeah, how anyone could do MJBiz and EDC, like that blows my mind. I just played like Top Golf and went to Wiz Khalifa, okay?
And then I was getting ready to leave and they were like, EDC, do you want to? And I don't know if it's the inner Texan in me or something, or like I just haven't learned, or I've learned. But I am very much open to, okay, let's see where that takes me.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how I roll. Like, I'm just like, okay, let's see where that goes. And I'll leave early or something.
Well, you're in the perfect industry.
I know. It was right for me. Yeah. I think you have to be like that to be in the military too, though. And I wanted to be a combat. So my childhood dream was to be a combat photojournalist.
Well, you kind of did that, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
So like, when someone was like, do you want a staff pass for EDC? I was like, staff pass as in I can go where the fuck I want?
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes, indeed. I will. I hope I'm not going to get Aldo. We might have to edit some of this. I don't know, bleep some of it out. I'll say some kind of pass. And who knows if they'll get credit. I don't want to get anybody in trouble for giving me a staff pass.
It was years ago.
It was years ago. True. I want him. That's the mom in me being like, we don't always want to break all the rules. But, ended up with staff pass, and that happened to be that year. Did you see those news reports where they were like, people are stuck at EDC, no one can get through to ride shares or anything because there was just such a massive amount of people there. It was so crazy, but it was the most magical. And I think this is the point of the story, is not to be like, wow, I just had this magical EDC experience. Eat it. Like, it's to be MJBiz, and there's some little energy vortex that we can all create here where wild things can happen. It's something about Vegas. And I got this staff pass, and it was this massive blackout where no one could leave EDC, and my son's birthday was, I had to be on my plane. And by a miracle, this cab driver, like with this Russian accent, is like, you need to go, I will take you. And I was like, the fuck is happening? It was mass panic, and I needed to get back for my son's birthday, and I just barely made it. And it was like,
did you make it?
I made it, man. I made it. Good. And I was able to get everything set up, and like no one noticed anything.
I love it.
But it was this wild experience of like, when you say yes at the right moments, don't push it that far. I did not anticipate the blackout.
For sure.
And that had me spun up for a second. But the moment that I calm myself down, because I was like, if I'm not on that plane and I'm stuck with all these 50,000 whatever people and I don't get to that birthday, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. I'll never come back again.
Right.
You know? But when I centered and calmed and was like, he was right there, man. My ride was right there waiting for me. It was easy breezy. Walked into the airport, no problem. Like,
and it's the energy, right? Like you have to call in that energy. Even like, you know, I had a disaster getting over here today, and then I like walked in. I'm like, I feel like
we should let them in a little bit. Can we let Marissa was actually in a car crash.
No, it wasn't a crash.
The other Uber was
the app crashed. Oh. And it was like it was a disaster. It should have been like a 20-minute ride here. It took like well over an hour, and we sorted it out. There was a lot going on.
I feel like that was you have to have like one of those
my coffee
moments.
Exploded all over my head, all over my clothes. It was a lot. But it was like, okay, well, I can come in and just be like, this sucks. Like this is how I'm starting MJBiz, which my mind went to initially. But then I walked in, saw you, hugged you. I'm like, I just need a minute to go change my energy. And I did. And now I'm just like so excited for what the rest is. It's all energy, right? And
I mean, let's talk about that. So leading up to coming out here, and before leading up to coming out here, level of like, am I actually doing this? Can I do this? Am I fucking nuts? Am I too ballsy? Is this like too big for my britches? Like, and you had shared that you also kind of went through a similar experience right before you launched a big event.
And fear and all the other things.
Like in all the military things I've done, I've never had an issue with that. Like I kind of do well in the adrenaline. But then for this, I was like, what is that about? What is that? And I didn't expect the pull to be so strong.
That for everything you've set up. Because Shaun is, just for the listeners, in case they're not following that part, like you're filming how many?
We're doing 12 to 13 this season. Lucky number 13 is yet to be determined. I'm waiting on a few confirmations. if we get it, it's going to be holy shit.
But your MJ Biz experience this year, which is wild because
it's filming.
We met so many years ago, and then now here we are, like, you're filming.
And it was just an idea from Clubhouse in 2020, Highly Enformed on Clubhouse.
Yeah, but here you are, and you're doing it. But you had that scared, and I kept checking in with you. How are you feeling? And you were open and honest, like, you're scared, or are you overwhelmed? Are you in over your head? And we've all been there.
I love it. And you were like, do you feel thrown in? I was like, give me more. Like, send me into the trenches. Like, it was so nice. And I think that's the important thing. You were always checking in, though. You were always checking in. And it's like,
it's important.
I sometimes forget that as a leader. I am a crazy hard charger type. And the military made me way more salty than I probably would have otherwise been. And it's okay. Like, it's a fine ride.
Life made me salty.
It's like well-aged cheese. I'm like, I think, and it gives me a level of honesty that, it might get me in trouble sometimes, but I do think the end goal is always ultimately everybody's growth and everybody's betterment, even when it's hard. Because, like, sometimes difficult conversations.
Growth is hard. It's painful.
Exactly. And relationships evolve and they develop over time, and you've got to have the difficult conversations. And to do that, there's got to be a level of safety and knowingness that we're probably all going to fuck up or say something or miscommunicate, because statistically, that's kind of what humans do.
Yeah.
And the willingness to, like, sit back, learn, peel the onion, release the energy, and just objectively look at it. I just am fascinated by, but it does make me move really fast, and it does make me, like, a little bit like let's go.
But you did it. You're here. You're interviewing me right now.
I know, it is kind of crazy.
You're third or fourth
and we
of
have
the
a
day.
beautiful studio, and we have incredible guests, and the level of humility and gratitude that I feel for that is, I think, something that if in the time that I did disappear, some of it was like procuring land because I wanted to get the hemp license for cultivation, like, took that much of a journey, which I think, like, hey, we got land in 5 years. That's not bad for self-funded Latinas. Like, and nobody is going to give us equity in Texas. Like, we're going to have to, there's a whole conversation that we have to have about how are we going to create our own equity, because it's not, and we saw how Minnesota unfolded. And
well, there's a whole conversation to be had about social equity licenses
that'll be
in general.
like
that's a whole, that's its own issue in itself.
It's got to be its own episode for sure.
Yeah.
But I know it's not coming. Like, I know in the Lone Star State, I am not banking on that. I'm going to have to make it myself. So I think that there's something to be said about coming to an event like MJ Biz, being willing to, like, be in the rooms and learn something, even from the people you may not always agree with, but they know something you don't know. And I think if we had more of that in this world, we might get closer to understanding, because isolating off and not speaking to each other, this is not working.
Well, let me ask you this. So we touched on, like, the imposter syndrome or the fear or the intimidation. How did you get over it and follow through with all of this? Like,
well, I committed and I invested my money into funding this project. And
you're like, I'm not taking a loss. We're doing it.
No, because, well, at the end of the day, like, okay.
Yeah.
So when I went on it wasn't even a hiatus. It feels like more like Odysseus. Like, and that feels so great, because actually my high school debate teacher had given me this poem about the Iliad. And I think we should definitely, the Odyssey is something, if you're a cannabis operator and you haven't read the Odyssey or the Iliad, you should probably pick up that book.
You should also read The Art of War.
Ooh, and The War of Art. You know, there's applications.
For sure.
But in the 2 years, like, procured the land, we got the ranch, and that took work. And it taught me that trying to get into cultivation was more like a 20-year plan, not a 5-year plan.
Correct.
And there's a certain level of capital, of course, that comes with that. Like, just securing the property was hard enough. And then we did it. And now that you have it, I'm not going to risk anything. I'm not going to risk it for search and seizure in the state of Texas. Absolutely not. No. So now I was like, well, we're going to have to reformulate what we're doing. You learn and you roll with the punches. And I think going through all the whiplash of that helped me prepare for coming out here and being ballsy enough to be like, we're going to shoot 12 episodes. But did I go through, I can own that. And while owning that, I want to fully own leading up to, like in the last few days, did I want to cancel my flight? Did I want to stay home and snuggle up with my kids? It's fucking December.
Yeah.
Like, did I want to wrap up on 2025? Yes, I absolutely did. And you'll come up with the best reasons to rationalize not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to get over that shit because that's just your own ego. Like, that's just, and I'm obviously, we're here, we're filming and it's day one, and today was remarkable. And I kept trying to remind myself, and it's so hard. And I'm going to say this, like, especially for anybody who's out there. And I'm, for some reason, like the psychedelics industry is coming to mind right now because, and I work in Canada. That was the other thing I did. Oh yeah, my bad. I forgot. And I worked as an operations manager in a psychedelics company for a little bit. Because I saw it was coming, cannabis and psychedelics, they mean something to me as a veteran, like PTSD. And now we're seeing the VA is going to conduct studies with MDMA, which is really good. Like, we need to create pathways for these, yes, medicines, but more than just medicines. Like with MDMA that you make in a pharmacy, you make that. So pharmaceuticals might have the best lane for research and development, although they need to be well supervised, those guys, like, which we're finding with the way that the American people voted this time. So we'll see what happens. But aside, like, you've got MDMA, you've got things like psilocybin, where you're finding a lot of benefits as far as like remapping neurology and helping people to fix issues that are long-standing with PTSD and to unravel some crazy tangles. And if the collective thinks that these things, like, the funny thing about the military is it's the beta test for the nation, really. Like, you'll test it on your veterans, and it's not something unique. I'm not like, this is not a politicized opinion. This is kind of like, analyze history, look at the metrics. Like, Teflon came from the military, right? It was being used on tanks, and then we put it on our frying pans, and now we have Andrew Huberman telling us, oh my God, don't use your nonstick frying pan. Like, we're still figuring it out, but it's a beta test, and we're learning MDMA, things, these entheogens, and psilocybin, and cannabis. Like, cannabis in so many different ways and so many applications has this potentiality. Like, there's so much opportunity, but you have to show up. And then you get those, like, so then what? We'll go back to the original topic was, how did I get over the anxiety?
Sure.
Look at all the applications. Like, look at who you can help. Look at what it can change. Like, how can you not?
Like, you feel like it's your duty, right? Because you're in it. So, and you have a voice. You have a platform now. You have a voice. You have the connections. I mean, even like, when we were talking about this interview. If you're crazy enough to go to Texas and be like, I smoke weed, we've got to normalize this shit. Like, you're committed. You got to, there's a level of commitment you can't walk back. Well, you're going to deal with pushback no matter what state you're in or where. I mean, I'm hearing about people getting pushback from Vice right now in Vegas. And who would ever think that, like, Vegas Vice is pushing down on cannabis, but it's happening. And that's why we've lost a lot of big money investors, right? Because back in 2018, 2019, even 2020 during the green rush, there was a lot of money pouring into cannabis. I mean, I remember going to like the Canadian Stock Exchange mixer at MJBiz a couple of years ago, and it was a whole different world than what we're seeing now because it is risky. The laws aren't changing as rapidly as everyone thought. We are still federally illegal and prohibited. And let's talk about that for a minute, right? Like, even as a mother, you're a mom, and even my daughter is grown, so I don't have to think about things the way that I used to because there's no threat the way that there used to be. But a lot of people don't realize, like, I'm constantly explaining to friends and family outside of the business, like,
there's a third risk assessment.
We are legal in California, but everything that or a lot of what I do is still federally illegal. So and people don't realize that even in California, like, if you're driving through a Border Patrol checkpoint, which are all over California, even within the state, and Border Patrol they have a right to search.
I've been stopped by Border Patrol.
Me too, a million times. But listen, like, 100 miles, within 100 miles of any international border, which includes the water, Border Patrol has a right to pull you over and search your car without cause.
Mm-hmm.
That puts so many people at risk that are just doing their jobs. Like, and I've worked for companies and with companies whose vans have been seized, and it happens rarely, but it happens. And you have the legal metric paperwork and the licensing, and you're paying all this
Well, and
crazy
they're
money
doing
and
it like
all
when
this
I was pulled over,
taxation
it
and
wasn't
all of
even for
these
business.
things.
It's just like a private citizen. Like,
But even forget that, because not private citizen. We always want
even
that to be a
with and
thing.
without
But
the
I'm just
paperwork,
saying,
like
like,
it's
even
an
paying these
extension
crazy
of
taxes.
power. Yeah.
And then the second you're walking into some of these dispensaries, you're paying 37% taxes. But what they don't realize is that, like, banking is illegal. I've literally been at a gas pump with a credit card that's gotten shut off because they realized that it was cannabis, and federally the banks, because banks are typically FDIC insured, that's federal, so they will like cut you off. They'll take your banking. With Women of Cannabis, we had to change our name legally to WOC International because nobody would touch us with the word cannabis in our name. And it's there's just so many things. The second that you fly, like, people ask me all these questions, well, can you bring me this? Can you do this? I'm like,
No.
look, the second that you fly, you're in federal. It's now illegal. The second you cross a state line, now you're breaking a federal law.
Mhm.
The second you put something in the mail, federal. People just don't realize, and like, until it becomes federally legal, there's a lot of that. And that's a whole other conversation because there's a lot of pros and cons to federal legalization.
Mhm.
That, like I said, it's a whole other thing. But
Well,
there's
we were
just
talking about we've got to, and when we talked with Peter and Frank, we talked about we've got to use federal to remove barriers, but then on a state by state basis, it's probably how this needs to get done because it's so specific, and we can't. Like, California is already so regulated. It's a different story from other states like Missouri or Ohio or Texas when it comes online. Like, and each region will do. New York is doing its thing. Everyone wants to
California
try
is a
something new.
beautiful example of a lot of things not to do. As much as, like, and I know we've talked about this, and sorry to everyone that's not in California cannabis. I know it gets annoying, but like, California is the king of cannabis. I know I will argue anybody in the entire world on that point.
And they were saying what's happening internally is happening because it hasn't been unleashed federally. So you have like an overstock of material that could feed the nation.
We still have, and look, still a huge majority of California cannabis is leaving our state. And as we know, that's not legal. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you're going to put so many ridiculous restrictions, if you really want to talk about it, like the federal government should indict themselves on a RICO case because everything that we're doing is federally illegal, yet you're collecting our taxes and you're taking all of this money all across the board. Well, you just accepted federally illegal money, so go RICO yourself. Like, I could go on for days about
That's
it.
funny.
Yeah, I get super, but I've also, since I was a child, been, what is it, oppositional defiant disorder. I've had an issue with authority. So it's like, don't touch the stove. I'm probably going to burn my hand.
And cannabis helps with that.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, federal government. So it's just tricky.
It's tough because they're also trying to figure out, I know with like our legislators, there's some who are earnest.
Right.
And regulation also gets made with whoever's in the room at the time. So whatever we know at the time is, and everybody was like, it's THC.
But even that, even whoever's in the room, it's whoever's being paid. Like, let's get real. I've talked about this to death, but even like the state that I'm from, New Hampshire, I'm from an hour north of Boston, and like New Hampshire's the only state in New England that has not legalized cannabis. New Hampshire also alternates between number 3 and 5 for the highest opioid abuse in the nation and number 1 for alcohol consumption per capita. If you don't think that lobbyists and a bunch of money, big pharma money, big alcohol and big tobacco money isn't going in to all of those legislators, everyone, to make sure that cannabis is not legalized. And people would say, well, why? Well, because it's statistically proven, and I know we can lie with statistics, but it's proven that states with legalized cannabis have a much lower alcohol use and much lower pharmaceutical abuse issues.
And industry-wise, they are starting to say that it is affecting
accident.
Alcohol sales. Like alcohol sales are dropping. Even if you would take it away from an addiction treatment perspective, purely from the numbers perspective, it shifts things, certainly.
Babe, look at our industry. Like, half the people I work with in California came from the alcohol industry. They saw the writing on the wall. They saw the writing on the wall. And I'm not even talking just the people that came over from working for like well, I won't name names, but the bigger brands that have
Mm-hmm.
all kind of moved into cannabis, and half of them have left and gone back to alcohol, by the way, because the money has dried up and the salaries are not what they were a few years back at all.
Mm.
So half of them have gone back to big alcohol. Half of them have stuck it out, and we're all noticing like what that is, but take like the sales and the brand out of it. Like even the liquor stores and the smoke shop owners, they've all moved over to dispensaries. You ask 50% of the dispensaries in California, like what they were doing before, they were running some type of retail, whether it was a liquor store or a smoke shop or whatever type of retail it was, and they moved over. It's just, I don't know. It's there's a lot. There's so many layers, and
It's tough to
we're jumping
untangle.
all over, but like there's so much to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, for you, like what on the horizon's still giving you like hope? Like where are you seeing opportunities for growth? Because we know where like there is a lot of difficulty and challenge and people are going through the shit. And it's
mhm.
just like this whole coming to your first. So like you're gonna feel it, guys. You're gonna feel like you're
Yeah,
gonna not want to get on the plane, or you're gonna have that moment where you're like, what do I do next?
a lot. I mean, we talked about like Spanibus last year, right? Like ended up in a position where I had to make a huge decision last March. Like we were going to throw an event for women of cannabis out in Spain, and like some things happened and we had to put that on hold, and
Mm-hmm.
my partners and I, we were just pulled in different directions, and it wasn't the right time, but it was like, okay, but I'm already going. I've already got like this location locked down. I've already like
And that's kind of when you're in cannabis, like wearing multiple hats, you have to make decisions where you got to break things
oh,
up.
people ask me what I do in cannabis, like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh,
Everything.
I don't
What do
know
you,
how to
what,
answer that."
yeah, we're figuring
Like,
it out still.
yeah,
We're building an industry from the ground up.
sales, marketing, brand building, co-founder, women's group, the lots of these interview, like, I mean, shit. There's
Wearing
just
all
so
those
many.
hats, like,
Yeah, but
so you break it up and you end up having to like, didn't you tell me that you had to do a lot of that footwork? And
mhm,
the question for you was, do I, you were already committed. Do I stay in it to win it? Or is
mhm,
this the time to pull chalks? And there is a time where like every smart business owner knows,
sure.
yes, we're going to push all our chips in, or
Yeah,
no, I'm going to pull them back. And sometimes that voice that's telling you, no, I'm going to pull them back, it should be a confident one
yeah,
versus like, I realized that the reason that I needed to do this was because the voice that was telling me to pull back was scared,
yeah,
not because it was the right thing to do. And I was like, oh, that's how I know. If fear is triggering it, that's how I know that's not my gut telling me to get wise.
yeah.
That's my anxiety trying to talk me out of growing in a new direction. Like,
Yes, and I had thrown all these events, right? Like my partners Katie and Kaylee and I, like we had thrown events all throughout California. We had done Los Angeles multiple times, San
so
Francisco,
you'd had
San
a couple
Diego,
successes.
Miami. We had so many successes under our belt. And when it came time for Spain, and it wasn't the right time at the last minute, and we had a lot of other things going on where it just didn't make sense for us to do it. It was like that was a really hard decision. It was like I either have to pull this and like kill it, and I don't want to do that because so much has gone into it, so much legwork. I had gone to Spain the year before just to like see if this was something that we should be doing, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go do it by myself. And I was shook. Like, I was like, if I fail, this is going to be the biggest, like, most public fail and on an international level. Like, I had thrown a bunch of events with my partners, I had never
And
done it by
Spanibus
myself.
was it. Like,
Spanibus is it, in my opinion. Like, I
yes.
love, like I said, I think MJBiz, Spanibus, Hall of Flowers, like, if you're trying to up your career, if you're trying to network, like, those are the three to hit. They're very, very different.
Mhm.
The three couldn't be more different from each other, I don't think.
Ooh, I think there's something to like explore there. Is like you need to approach, you need to tap into the energy and then read that, like ride that wave, because each one is different. So if you come to each one with the same approach, you're not likely to yield.
Well, and let me tell you, like the connections that I've made at Spanibus the last few years are first of all, there's just something to be said. Like even if I'm seeing some of the same people from the California market or the New York market or wherever that I've seen like in the United States when you're out in Barcelona, like it's just different because now you're international and okay, so I was telling you this on our pre-interview. A really weird moment is I was at a huge hash competition
Mhm.
at like this castle, like 15 or 30 minutes outside of the city,
That
right?
sounds amazing.
And I'm sitting like talking to this woman. She's from Italy and she's so dope. And we're smoking and she's a hash maker and she's really
Mm.
cool. And like, I am way too high. I had to like put myself in the corner and drink 10 bottles of water. But came back to her and like talking to her. And I'm just like, this is a vibe. This is so wild. And after we were chatting, I was like, hey, like, what's your Instagram? Like, let's connect. Let's stay in touch. And I do still stay in touch with her. She's dope. But when I typed in her Instagram, mine's private and it said follow back. And I'm like, I show her, I'm like, wait, how are you following me? And she's like, well, she's like, it's funny because in Europe, we watch what's going on in California and we start to kind of like figure out like
what
that
market trend is going to happen.
yeah. And like, it
Yeah.
was crazy because I'm sitting here like, I'm not an influencer. I'm not like I said, my Instagram's private. I have a couple thousand followers. It's not like whatever.
I think information is changing. Like, and I don't, wherever you land on this, because, and I have to say this with a caveat, because some people may try to like make it politicized or some kind of stance, but I worked for the Department of Defense under the Bush administration. Like I'm older. I'm old. I'm not ashamed to say I'm 38. So like not too old, not too young. But I worked under 3 administrations and this was after 2001. So 9/11 was our main event. And then I enlisted. So I worked for Bush and Obama, and I also worked for President Trump. And so now we've come around the corner again, and I worked for at least Hillary Clinton as secretary. While she was Secretary of State, I worked with the Department of Defense.
Yeah, you're working for DOD. Meanwhile,
Right.
I'm on Homeland Security's list, literally. Literally.
That's what's so.
I'm not even joking.
But the parallels, what really attracted me into cannabis is, yes, I'm a Texan, and there is a level of, when you look at alcohol, and alcohol was how it was made legal, and you look at how prohibition markets are regulated and made legal,
sure,
there is something that we can learn about how we build our frameworks, because while the United States may be in a state of denial about how we do it, prohibition markets do drive our economy, and it doesn't affect international business, trade, commerce, like the full 9, security. Like, fun fact, what I studied while I was with DOD was international relations and transnational security. And I started in Middle Eastern studies, and then I deployed to Afghanistan. And I was like, Jesus, this is too fucking depressing to also study it. Like, to be out here and see what's going on and where we're going and how they were planning on conducting the withdrawal.
And why we were there.
That's also difficult though, because while I was there, like, and I'm away from my kids, so there's a personal toll. And my youngest was young. While I was there, like, we also trained female Afghan journalists, and we taught them, like, here's your voice, here's how to tell a story, here's how to do this, because that is the way to create some change, is to give some voice and power to the people.
That's where it gets difficult.
That's what's hard about, like, the way, I think that's what's pissing off a lot of veterans today. I don't want to speak for everybody, but Afghanistan was a huge disaster, like the withdrawal, and it's acknowledged that we messed that one up, and there's ways to do it, and there's ways that we messed up, and we have to learn from that, because the costs,
we're messing up right now.
Yeah, the costs are huge.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're messing up right now. Yes.
So are we learning from our history? Like, that's what's difficult for me.
I feel like that's why people like me and you and whoever else is out there listening and is a little weirdo who wants to come to MJBiz to try to make their dreams come true and help the world become a better place have to get over your anxiety and show up, because if we aren't out there telling that story, who is?
And if we're going to go into that conversation about kind of like opportunity or rights and wrongs, like we do come from an immense place of privilege. Immense. Like, we have the ability to travel. We have resources. Like,
well, I mean, and that's why I wanted to be a combat photojournalist, because what combat journalism was like the first time we showed the American people what war really looks like.
Yeah.
And it blew their minds.
And what has changed? Like, I think if you ask anybody that's traveled extensively, like what has changed you the most or where's your best education, it's travel. Like I am a high school dropout. A lot of people don't know that. I dropped out, I dropped out like in the beginning of 10th grade. I
Mm.
don't have an education. I never went to college. I had a child super young, but I've beat every statistic. And that's because number one, I never wanted to be a statistic. Number two, tell me I'm going to fail, which a lot of people did, including authority. I made sure that I wasn't doing that. I wasn't going to fail. Like it was like, oh, tell
You
me I'm
were
going to fail.
like,
I'm going to go beat those odds. And there's even more, like, even more personal stuff that I won't share from like teenage
because
years
I
and
do
where I
think
ended
there
up.
is something about
But
discretion.
yes,
Yeah,
and
and
like
privacy
traveling.
in the age of social media. And like,
Yeah.
let's also be like really honest, like with the people and the dreams and all of that. The
Mm-hmm.
media and what is happening right now, like what we saw with the election is that under overestimation of traditional media, which has been, and when I worked with, so I was a combat
Oh,
photojournalist.
traditional media is dead.
It, I don't think the broadcasters got the memo when the print journalists went out in the early 2000s because of digital media. And I don't think that I think they underestimated how divided the people would become, because this is where I kind of get nerdy with it, and we'll have to rabbit hole because
Mm-hmm.
like this could be its own episode, and this is
Yeah.
where like all my passions blend in. But sports entertainment and ESPN had come up with this formula that worked really well with Pardon the Interruption and Around the Horn, these shows where you had these experts arguing about, no, his stats are this and we're doing this season. And that's how we started doing the news, because some of those folks from those sports entertainment spaces got really good at their job and they took that, they applied it in another space, broadcast news.
Yeah.
And this is where you get CNN and Fox. And so it's like we did it to ourselves by growing into the opportunity, but we have to learn, like, oops, where we went too far.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just keep arguing to make noise.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be Pardon the Interruption Around the Horn, because that's about basketball and football. We're talking about running the country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We gotta come on. Although Rome and let their circus and bread and all of that, these are age-old experiences.
Okay, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. You just hit it, like the bread and circus, the divide and conquer. It's the oldest tricks in the book, and we're still go on to social media for 5 minutes and it's still working. It's still working, and that's what blows my mind. I'm like, guys,
how do we disrupt? And how do you get to that space where, because it's so, and I hear you and I agree, but I'm also like, maybe, and I'm always like, my deepest fear is being like called an apologist, because I'm like, no, man, I'm trying to be critical.
I don't
I'm
think
trying
you're
to
an
get
apologist
everybody.
at all.
Just give them time. No, I think it's because, you want to know why I'm probably sensitive to it, is because I grew up split between Minnesota and Texas. And then I spent, like, right before I went back home to Texas, I was doing my thing with the military and was bopping about the world. Sure. And we did Japan and DC. And then my last tour was New York. So, and I thought I was going to be in the cannabis industry out of New York. But for family, we moved back to Texas. And I also realized, like, well, I'm going to have to flip Texas and we'll have to do it through hemp, which is kind of funny because, wow, has hemp having a day right now? And I just remember back and
the irony.
Yeah, I know. And everybody's like, you kid from Texas, you shut the fuck up. But sometimes we live and we learn, right? And sometimes we might be right. And coming back, I was going to make the most, also because I'm a Texan, I'm a Tejana. It's important to me to come back and help my people. So we took on that task, but like it takes that kind of showing up like against the wind while also measuring like, what are the consequences? What is my return? Like, how do you balance all of that?
But again, it's like almost your responsibility because of the privilege that we do hold. As much as like we do get the disparities and the discrepancies in pay and this and that, like just being a woman, let alone being a minority woman, like that's its own conversation in itself.
Yeah, I think that's what made securing things a little, like the runway was like, shit, this is gonna take a minute.
Yeah, for sure. And that, like,
because you can't on your mortgage statement be like, I work in ancillary business, cannabis services, like, and it's real secure, I promise. Like, you have to actually be able to back it up if you're gonna get any kind of title to real land, like,
But
and they're not gonna.
And as much as we have these issues and we have so much more work to be done and so much to move forward, we also can't lose like the rear view and how far we've come. We are women in the cannabis industry. I do sit at the table with many men all day. I am very comfortable in male dominated spaces, and in particular in the cannabis industry. I love this industry. It's not always easy and I don't always love it, but I love the majority of it. And even just like talking, like sitting here with you, I'm like remembering my why a lot, because it can.
I almost cried when I was like, wait, I broke it down. I didn't even know I was doing it.
Yeah.
But like, when you get back to it, you're like, oh shit. It matters.
And we are privileged. We are sitting at a table right now in Las Vegas, and neither of us are from here. We have a platform. We have a voice. We've been in the industry. We've been accepted in this industry. We've worked our asses off in this industry, and we're really lucky to be here. I mean, really lucky. We've both been well-traveled in different ways.
And
we
that
have
we
crazy,
have those people
wild,
who
different
reach down
backgrounds.
and pull you up.
Yes, girl. And that's why I'll always open a door. And for anyone, like, hit me up anytime. My Instagram's Marissa Twitchell on LinkedIn. If you like need a 20-minute combo on what to do or any advice, like, happy to help you if I can. I just think it's important. Like, you know, people helped me, like I said, to get where I am and answered my questions or gave me that opportunity. And I was hungry, man. So I was like putting my pride all the way over here and just like hustling, because I knew that I wanted to make some moves, and I feel like I have.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Well, that's the hot wash.
I can't wait to see.
We went all over the place.
We were everywhere, but
it's the after hours session in between.
Yes.
You know, we
knew it was going to go this way, though.
We did a lot of structure in the last episodes, and we needed to freewheel for a bit. For our next episode, we're transitioning into a few solo sessions, so I'm excited to get on the couch tomorrow and relax. But thank you so much for joining me here. And now,
Shaun, I can't wait to see what you have up next and what you're doing. 2026 Spanibus. I think you're just going to be hitting all the things. I'd be happy to help you in any way.
Definitely stay tuned, because actually Marissa has already helped me. We have Danny coming on later on in this season.
Yes.
And she did the International Cannabis Awards.
She's amazing. She was instrumental in helping some of my success in Spain, and she's just she's a gem.
I'm excited because she's got like serious veteran experience at MJBiz, and she's going to break it down on an MJBiz level, on an international level. And then I know she'll have some tips where I can just shut the fuck up, learn and listen.
I've learned and listened.
She's going to help me get into the international space, no?
Yeah.
If I can be wise and listen to what she has to say.
I've listened and learned a lot from her, and we will see her at her party tonight.
Yes, which we're about to head to. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Highly Informed. As always, stay classy, stay elevated. I don't know.
Keep elevated.
Yes, stay elevated. And thank you. Looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow morning.